नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम्।
Narayana, the support of all beings. And Nara, incarnated as Bhagavan Sri Krishna and Arjuna for Dharma Rakshana. We all take birth in this Bhuloka. There are many lokas. Why would we choose to come here? For many of us, if we are not even introduced to this idea, then we just assume this is it. We might not be aware that this is a temporary journey which continues, which has always been there, and it continues beyond as well, and a temporary sojourn here. And hence, when we look at it as a temporary sojourn, obviously there should be some purpose. Why would we choose to come here? Come to this Bhuloka? It's by choice. For many, since that introduction to that kind of a jnana has not been there, because of a lack of exposure, appropriate reasoning has not developed. That's why the Itihasa Purana, one of the benefits of listening to it is Antakarana Shuddhi. The inner instrument, the mind, is cleansed of ignorance, of vagueness. It becomes clear. There is clear reasoning. There is a reason for which we came here. And through the life stories of great Mahapurushas, we learn the reasoning. What could be a reason to come here? Even that is not automatic, that's not fixed in stone, so to speak. So that's where Rishi Narayana and Rishi Nara, incarnated as Bhagavan Sri Krishna and Arjuna. For what purpose? For Dharma Rakshana, it is mentioned. This also leads us to the question about the purpose of our life, which is illustrated as the Purushartha, the meaning and purpose of a life, which is characterized as Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha. It's not easy to characterize it. If you look at human life around us now, even our own lives, it's not easy to characterize our intentions. Many a time it's unconscious. We don't know where we are headed. And hence for many people now, they find their own lives meaningless. Their own activities valueless. And that is a great tragedy. Because we chose to come here and we find there is no meaning. Oh. There are different kinds of poverty. One is poverty of food. Another is poverty of love, care, affection. But this poverty is a great tragedy, a poverty of inspiration. When we wake up in the morning, if we are not inspired, we are not motivated, then obviously our life appears valueless to us. See, if our life appears valueless to someone else, it's acceptable. Because the framework of value, value evaluation, that could be different. But if our life appears meaningless to ourselves, no value, that's very tragic. That's the ultimate torture. And now so many people suffer through such a perspective. It's to do with a perspective. And that's where the Itihasa Purana gives us that expansive perspective by which we are liberated in our vision, gaining clarity as to what our life is, what is the purpose of our life. So, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. In this, we could also choose a life of pleasure, kama, pursuit of pleasure, which is not considered wrong. There are even kama shastra, shastra describing the pursuit of pleasure. It's not looked down upon. Again, there is an appropriateness to everything. And that's a broad term. It encompasses a wide variety of orientations. One could choose to pursue artha. But it is illustrated that Bhagavan Krishna and Arjuna incarnated for dharma rakshana. It's a very deep understanding. They were true to that purpose. And that's also illustrative for us when we listen to it. Once when we were traveling to Hemkund Sahib in the Himalayas, which is a very holy place for Sikhs. It was mentioned to us, the story of that place, how Guru Gobind Singh Ji, a great Guru, he in his previous lifetime, a previous life, during his tapasya there, he got a ajna. For the purpose of dharma rakshana, he should be born in such and such circumstances. And that's how he agreed to be born as the son of Guru Tegh Bahadur. And for the purpose of dharma rakshana. Because so many people were tormented. He was born to protect them, to liberate them from their torture. So like that, being able to inquire as to the purpose of our own lives is a very significant thing. And it's not a straightforward, boxed up logic. And we bow down to Devi Saraswati, the governing intelligence of all knowledge and learning. The idea of a governing intelligence is very critical. In the modern educational perspective, most of our education gives us knowledge of this objective reality. But then we understand there is a governing intelligence to all objective things. For example, if you have a home, you are the governing intelligence of that home. Observed from outside, one would see only a brick and mortar structure. But then there is a governing intelligence. Looked at from outside, only this body is seen. But then you as the governing intelligence, the Antaryami, It's a very critical understanding. When that is taken away, then everything is just Jada Swarupa, the nature of Jada, no Chaitanya Shakti. Even to material reality, we ascribe governing intelligence. To intangible reality as well, there is a governing intelligence. For example, there is democracy. It's not material, but still there is a governing intelligence to sustain that democracy. Certain value systems in society. Without appropriate guidance, it degrades. Knowledge and learning are no different. There also a governing intelligence becomes very important. And sa rasa, to make it rasatmika, is the purpose of knowledge. Now the rasa, many people don't enjoy knowledge. It's not rasatmika. So we bow down to Devi Saraswati, who makes knowledge and learning rasatmika. It fills us with a liberating feel. Knowledge is that empowering. And we bow down to Vyasa Maharishi, who has given us this Jaya. Mahabharata is called Jaya because it gives victory. And victory is an attitude. Success is an attitude. And it's not straightforward. In your lives, you're all successful people. And that success, you see, is to do with fine assessment to judgment, which cannot be put down in rules, which cannot be put down in commandments. Say, do this and you will be successful. No, it's fine assessment. That's the nature of life, the nature of reality. Even to drive in the roads, we need fine assessment. We have road rules, yet it takes a lot of judgment and skill to drive. To drive through our own lives, similarly, it takes a lot of fine skill at assessment, at judgment. Even to cook, when a mother cooks, it's fine skill at judging. Initially, we might start with rules that are well laid out. But that's for a beginner. After that, a person in any position, they are given the freedom to use their judgment. So Vyasa Maharishi gave us this Jaya. For each one of us to be successful, to be victorious. And victory, what does success mean? That is also linked with one's own assessment. It's not so hard and fast. And there is inner freedom. Each Jivatma is free to achieve its own success, the purpose for which we came to this Bhuloka. Otherwise, just imagine, now modern science, with modern astronomy, we see that there are billions of stars in our, in our galaxy. The distance to the nearest star is measured in light years. And we don't have the technology to travel to the nearest star. It's still ahead. Now, because of significant effort, Chandrayaan has happened. Mangalyaan will happen. But then, the nearest star Yaan should also happen. No? the galactic yarn should also happen. That is progress in science and technology. And we can envision that looking ahead will give us the energy to commit to a fulfilling life on this Bhuloka. So billions of stars in one galaxy, and there are trillions of galaxies. And now with modern astronomical research, the estimate is that there are at least 100 billion Earth-like exoplanets. So many habitable zones which can sustain life as we know it here. Obviously, there are a lot of options, we are not without options. Then why would we choose to come here in this kind of manner? So obviously that reasoning is very important, and that's where to be able to look at our own lives as successful is not easy. It requires deep understanding. Otherwise, if we just think, okay, Gadi, Bangla, and I'm successful. Now, many people struggle with that idea. I have everything, and yet I'm not at peace. I don't look at my life as, yes, I have done it. It's with a little hesitation. हाँ, सब ठीक है, मगर there is a hesitation. So that's where even that idea of fulfillment, that we look at our own lives as successful, is not so straightforward. As a direct match with external circumstances. I have this, yes, that's it. That does not work for a sensitive, reasoning, intelligent being. It requires much more depth of reasoning, a multidimensional view. And that's where the Mahabharata, the Itihasa Purana, gives us that depth of perception. It leads to the right perspective. And that is very critical. It provides a full spectrum from objective reality to a purely subjective reality. The full spectrum is covered. And that is important.
So when we say Itihasa Purana, the word Itihasa means thus it happened. So in the collective consciousness of Bharata, when we say Itihasa, it means that it is the story of or the historical narrative of our ancestors. But unfortunately, whatever happened in history, we ended up calling all this mythology, as if it never happened. And a lot of now archaeology, astronomical, genetic studies are happening to establish, at least the time periods and everything of the Itihasa, at least the Ramayana and Mahabharata. But it's not an easy task. That said, when we see Itihasa and Purana, there is something called Purana Panchalakshanam. The 5 characteristics or 5 features of a Purana. All the Puranas will have this. The Mahabharata somewhat forms the spine like structure because it has the characters and stories of many Puranas that appear in the Mahabharata. So you have the Panchalakshana, which include Sarga, Pratisarga, Vamsha, Vamshanucharita and Manvantara. So the Sarga and Pratisarga, of course, one interpretation is that it talks about the main chapters and the sub-chapters. But the other way to look at it is it talks about the main creations and the sub-creations. So it has details about cosmological events, how this universe was created. Of course, it will differ from the modern scientific worldview of how the universe was created. But nevertheless, in all the Puranas, you will find a story or a narrative on how this universe came into being and how the various creatures were created. So you have the Daityas, Danavas, Asuras, Devas and many creations, how they came, that is also captured in the Puranas. So you have basically something like a modern evolutionary biology, you have the creations mentioned in the Purana. Then the Vamsha, you have the large dynasties and the lineages and genealogies mentioned in the Puranas. So, all the Puranas will have the genealogy mentioned, and also the minor civilizations that were there across the region. And Manvantara is of course the time scales. It will talk about the Kalpa, the Manu, year of the Manu, the Yugas, Kali Yuga, Dwapara, and all the Yugas, the duration of it, where are we in that time scale, all that would be mentioned in the Purana. The Mahabharata too has all these details. So, that way learning or reading the Mahabharata becomes a very multi-dimensional experience. And in fact, if you look at it, there are more than about 300 verses or so that talk about astronomical events. So, that is what many people now, researchers, are using in order to date the Mahabharata using astronomical evidences. Of course, there are different agreements and disagreements, we will not go into that. So, that way the reading the Mahabharata becomes a multidimensional experience, at least that has been the personal experience, because not every problem can be solved only through human discussions. Like if we are faced with a life situation, how long can we talk and then resolve it? There is a limitation to our capability, there is a limitation to the capability of people around us. But these become texts, central texts by which we can learn vicariously. Through the situations that the characters in the Mahabharata or the Ramayana went through, we are able to draw life lessons and also emulate them in certain circumstances, adopt and adapt those solutions, even to run an organization, to run our daily lives, to take care of our children, to take care of our parents. All these contexts are present in the Mahabharata. It is very enriching. That is why they say what is there in the Mahabharata, what is it?
What is, the Mahabharata contains everything, all
yeah,
knowledge.
Correct.
So, what is not there
cannot
be found anywhere else.
Yes.
It is so all comprehensive.
Comprehensive.
That is the nature of knowledge present in the Mahabharata.
And when told in the story form, when told in the verse form, it is in a chandas, it is set to a meter. So, that gives an opportunity, if one wants, one can memorize the entire Mahabharata for that matter. But nevertheless, when told in a story format, it becomes a very relatable history. All of us, have gone through history, during our school days. Very few of us would have loved it as a subject, right? Because one thing is because the history teacher could have been very impressive, that helped us to relate to history. Otherwise, it would have been just numbers and dates and some time periods. It did not invoke a certain emotion in us. We would remember the dates, we would remember the incidents, but we would not record them as episodes in our memory, because the rasa is not presented in the texts. But when we look at the way the Mahabharata or the Ramayana, the Itihasas are written, they are blended with emotions that such that we record them as, what is called as, in modern science we talk about episodic memory, which is our personal memory, which is like, anecdotes from our own lives. But nevertheless, this also, since there is so much emotion involved in it, we record it in a very different way compared to how we record historical events. So, that way the Mahabharata becomes a very powerful narrative, and there are so many incidents in the Mahabharata that capture the essence of even day-to-day struggles and confusions that we go through, what we call as dilemmas or dharma sankatas. We are often pushed into situations where we have to decide this or that, right? Or we have to decide, we have to take up something which we may not be for it, or others may not support us. Then how do we go about certain things? That is where the presence of the Bhagavad Gita within the Mahabharata adds to the entire flavor of it, because there is so much that is brought out through the Bhagavad Gita as well. So, when we look at the Mahabharata, there is so much that we can learn from it. But sometimes what happens, we do have these questions, why did these people behave in a certain way? Often we have this question, in the Sabha, why was Bhishma silent? Or why did Yudhishthira pawn everything, including his wife, his kingdom? Why did he have to do that? Was he enticed by the game of dice? so much so that he had to pawn everything? Or why did many of the characters behave in this way, that what led to the war? There are so many questions that arise in people's mind. And in fact, there is also like, why did Dronacharya fight on the side of the Kurus or the Kauravas? When Arjuna was there on the side of the Pandavas, his favorite student was there. So there are so many questions that arise in our mind. Maybe you can take up one of these dimensions and
Yes, this is very useful leading light, as I can say that. Because otherwise it's so vast. One can look at it from diverse angles. One of the angles is Dharma Sankata. The same aspect of Dharma, but we will also look at it from a spiritual angle as well, spiritual perspective as well. Because Dharma can be resolved only when moksha is kept in mind. Dharma from a spiritual perspective works like this. Now when we look at it from an outsider's point of view, we see only differences. And hence a Dharma Sankata will be how to navigate to somehow patchwork so that for the time being it's resolved. What is called Samadhana, arriving at a Samadhana. But from the perspective of moksha, from the perspective of the true spiritual essence or adhyatma, that helps us resolve it completely. The same presence that is here is there, is there, is there, is everywhere. The outward manifestation or the expression of that divine presence is diverse. For example, this tube light or this camera, they both might look very, very different. The functionality is very, very different. But what connects both of them is the same. They work based on the same electrical energy. If that electrical energy is not there, then that would not work, this AC would not work, nothing would work. So that unifying principle, but expressed through diverse functionality, is how this reality is viewed. That's a spiritual perspective, where the unifying principle is the pradhana, is the basis on which, because of different samskaras, the expressions are varied. Then this leads to a real samadhana. Without this, it is just patchwork. So that's how a adhyatmic vision or a spiritual perspective really liberates us from that sankata. Otherwise, we are cornered. We are moving from one problem to another. There is no real resolution. It's like moving this from here to there, there to here. For example, in a home, to make it appear different, we will move the table from here to there, and we will feel satisfied for the time being. Then we will feel, अरे ये यहाँ नहीं रहना है, इसको यहाँ लगाना है. This is from one perspective. So that's where the spiritual perspective, that we are that Atman. We are Satchit Ananda Swarupa, Brahma Swarupa. All this is nothing but that Brahman. Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma is a Veda Mahavakya. So keeping that as the basis is very important when we approach dharma. And hence dharma can be viewed as that which reinforces the spiritual perspective. Not as opposed to it or not somehow arriving at the spiritual perspective. No, this is the basis that those actions that reinforce this view is dharma. Because that's an expression of the fundamental reality. The fundamental reality is that all this is nothing but that Brahman, nothing but God, nothing but that Atma Swarupa. It's the same Antaryaman that motivates all of this. And from this angle, when we approach dharma, you see it starts with something that actually provides true resolution, the unifying principle. And hence, now activities can be analyzed. Having known this, how do we structure ourselves so that the expressions are appropriate, true to this spiritual principle? What is meant by appropriate? That which is reflective of the fundamental reality. The nature of reality is this. The nature of reality is not this versus that. The nature of reality is all this arises from the same substratum, the fundamental consciousness. And hence, the expressions, how do they get varied over time? This kind of a build-up is shown, illustrated beautifully through the various stories. So let me start with a story, because everyone is waiting for the story part. Principles wise, but stories get exciting. There is a beautiful story of Devavrata's birth. Devavrata is the son of Shantanu. He is later called Bhishma because he takes up a Bhishana Vrata. It's a terrible vow. And hence he is called Bhishma. That's an epithet that gets attached to him. Otherwise, his name is Devavrata. He is the son of Shantanu Maharaja. Shantanu Maharaja is married to Ma Ganga. Later, Ma Satyavati Devi. It so happens, whenever Ma Ganga gives birth to a child, to a son, she does a crazy act which nobody is able to come to terms with. She drowns the child, infant. See, just imagine, visualize a new baby born and Ma Ganga drowns the child. Otherwise, she is absolutely fine. She is a Maharani. She is a mother to the entire Praja. See, this is not a Western view of Raja Rani is very different. They are always engaging in Kama Bhoga. But the Indian view is always Dharma Pradhana. The Raja and Rani primarily treat the Praja as their own children. Bhishma describes to Yudhishthira Raja Dharma, where the Praja are treated like a mother keeping a pregnant mother keeping the primacy of the prime thing is well-being of the child in the womb. So no action is done which will affect the child in the womb. That's how the Raja Dharma should be undertaken. This is a beautiful, powerful imagery. So it is not like you do anything. Any wanton action is sanctioned. No, the Dharma Shastras don't sanction such things. They severely look down upon someone who has responsibility but who misuses it, who does not use it for the welfare of their praja. So the praja has to be treated like a child in the womb is treated by a mother. Very powerful, very clear. And hence the conscience of the Rajan is cultivated in this manner. They are trained systematically. And holding this is not easy. Imagine, it takes a lot of awareness all the time. It takes a lot of tyaga. General youthful behavior is, I don't care. And that is considered freedom. But here, I care, that is considered freedom. I care for everybody. See, that kind of a freedom can be hugely burdensome. But one is trained to carry that cognitive load and not keep it down.
In fact, when you talk about cognitive load, so I'm reminded of this episode, the conversation that happens between Satyabhama and Draupadi. So the Pandavas are in Vanavasa, and Krishna's wife Satyabhama visits them in the Vana. And then she asks Draupadi that how come the Pandava brothers are so devoted to you? They are always around you. So did you put any charm or mantra, tantra, something did you do for them to be so attached to you? So Draupadi, of course, is a very proud lady. She feels offended. She is saying, I don't have to put any charm for them to be around me. The very way I live, they are devoted to me. And then she goes on to explain the kind of responsibility that she takes up in the kingdom. She is the first one to wake up and the last one to go to bed. She knows the names of all the attendants that are there in the palace, their family members, how many children they have, who's present today, why is the reason somebody is not present, what is going on in their family. And when the Pandava brothers go on a expedition, then several Urdhvareta rishis accompany them, and each rishi has several attendants. So who puts the attendants in charge is Ma Draupadi, who does that. And she also knows who is in charge, what are the elephants and whatever entourage that goes with the Rajas. So that's such a huge cognitive load she takes up. It is not by maintaining an attendance register or a data sheet, but through that love, care and the attention that she pays to every little detail. And she was the only one among the Pandavas to know the exact income and expenditure of the treasury, because they were busy doing their own things, but who would keep account? So when we read the Mahabharata, the understanding of women itself becomes very different. We always think about women oppression, women not being so capable, given very minor roles. But all the women that appear in the Mahabharata, they've played like larger than life roles. Not just because they were like Kshatriya women, but even the simplest of women discussed over there, they had so much power in them, they had so much authority, they had so many people listening to them in fact. So very different picture from what you often discuss about the role of women.
And that's because also they displayed capability in handling such diverse responsibilities. And that is the Matru Bhava, the Matritva, the motherly feeling allowed them to take up so much responsibility. Even now mothers display that. They take care of every single individual. No individual is left off to fend for themselves. That is a motherhood that needs to be awakened in anybody. That is not restricted to a masculine form or a feminine form. That motherly feeling, Matritva, that Matru Bhava. And that is displayed in all the great women of the Mahabharata.
When a woman like Ma Ganga, who is an embodiment of that, when she lets the children afloat, then people are like...
Yeah, people are shocked because they are not able to, come to terms. She is this way, that is what the image is because of her actions. She has displayed that. She has taken care of the entire praja as her children. But when it comes to her own son, is she a Rakshasi that she is doing such a heartless thing as to drown a newborn child, a newborn infant? And hence nobody is able to resolve it, and she is absolutely mute. No, she does not open her mouth. She's mute. And the condition, the precondition for the marriage was that she cannot be questioned. When Shantanu Maharaja expresses the desire to marry her, she places a condition. There is a clause attached to it. No. Even now we have, right? Now we look at alimony and so on. So there is a clause attached to it. And that is, her actions cannot be questioned, no matter what. And she rides on that. Something like this, which is definitely worthy of questioning. Why? Even punishment. But cannot be questioned. Shantanu is absolutely silent. The people demand an answer, but no, that is the precondition to the marriage. Otherwise, she will walk out of the marriage. That's the condition on which she agrees to get married. And this happens not once. The second child is born, drowned. Third, drowned. Fourth, drowned. Fifth, drowned. Sixth, drowned. Seventh, drowned. And shock after shock. The entire Rajya, the entire kingdom goes into depression. The eighth, obviously the pressure builds up. Shantanu bursts out. And obviously her actions have been questioned. And the marriage stands broken. And hence, Ma Ganga tells Shantanu Maharaja, reveals to him the past that had led to the present, but which is Rahasya, Daiva Rahasya.
So in fact, when you told about this question, I am reminded of this. We were doing a 3-day online program on Grihastha Dharma. So I was just asking the participants, what is the challenge in Grihastha Ashrama? Like almost everybody was mentioning that they don't feel that they have the freedom to do whatever they want to do. Everything they have to take the consensus of the spouse. It could be the husband or wife, or in the case the extended family, in-laws and everybody. So everybody was sharing that if they have an ambition, because okay, when they were bachelors, they felt that they had all the freedom, they could just take a decision whatever they want to. But when it comes to Grihastha Ashrama, somehow they felt very constrained, because they always had to be mindful what the other person would say, would they have their permission, even for a, in their opinion, even for a small thing, they felt constrained. So in that situation, Ganga ji getting the allowance to be unquestioned speaks a lot about the relationship as well.
Of those times. And that was respected. See, even such an act went unquestioned. See, that's the basis of family life. That no matter who you are, how you act, we are there for you. That's the basis of family life, which is shown in our Itihasa Purana. Once in Bangalore, we came to know of this news where there was a divorce that happened because the wife could not sanction her husband carrying this big umbrella, which looked awkward. So you see that implicit trust is the basis of family life. That is clearly established in manuals of dharma like our itihasas. Which otherwise, if we go into hair-splitting detail, obviously there will be difference of opinion about everything. How can two minds match completely? And yet in implicit faith, in good faith, we look ahead. That is the understanding. And that is very, very critical, and that's not easy. We see these are civilizational best practices, what we call as Samskriti or culture, are civilizational best practices. To evolve a best practice, to state a principle is very easy. Love all. Love is God. These are very simple principles. Everyone understands this. We should be loving and caring. But to implement it in actual life, one needs best practices. And best practices evolve through so many people having contributed to it through the ages, by which we know how to appropriately act. Otherwise, the principle is hidden. It's not clear how to actionate on it. One out of love will hurt others, while their intention would be love. Love can form into possessiveness, where others' freedom is gone. So, and hence, these are to do with best practices, which are called culture. That's how we have culture of a family, culture of an organization, culture of a nation as well, civilizational best practices that take a long time to evolve. And hence, that needs to be transferred to the next generation as well. Now, within nuclear families, it's very difficult to transfer this. And hence, the dependence on such Itihasa Purana. Through appropriate creating a complex, we can call it a cognitive simulation paradigm. It's a complex simulation. Through that, what is right, what is not, what is dharma, what is adharma is taught without teaching. And that is so essential. Otherwise, we go into ethics class, no two people will agree. Right? To arbitrate is very, very tough. So, teaching without teaching is very important. And for that, a complex cognitive background has to be built up. And the Itihasa does just that. So, we see this story within a story. So, she narrated, I started narrating one story, she went into another story, and now we went into another discussion and it's coming back. So, this is the nature of the discussion in the Itihasa Purana. This is called frame-based storytelling. There is frame within a frame within a frame. It's complex narrative which is built up, which is essential for the cognitive processes to be stimulated. If it is too linear, then one cannot grasp. So, this also builds our capability to reason with the complexities of life, because life is complex. You cannot make it we try to resolve it, arrive at a simplistic theory of everything here, definitely it fails. And every time we face failure over failure and struggle with understanding life. What is life? So, we see how this paradigm works. It's very, very powerful. To recreate it is almost impossible. In a classroom or as a civilization, it's not easy. And that's where the greatness of Vyasa, Vyasa Maharishi, Valmiki Maharishi, such great stalwarts lie. So, when we continue, we see, there is the aspect of she drowning so many children. And the 8th child, now the obligation is broken. The marriage obligation. So, marriage as an institution lies on this agreement. Now, the agreement is broken. Even now, marriage as an institution lies on this. It is supported by society. Now, when this is not understood, people think it's just, trying this, we can do away with it. No, that is symbolic. That has certain depth to it, but it also rides on this cultural ethos. It's built up. The whole ground has been built up for this to have its significance. Otherwise, what's the significance? So, without understanding this framework, if it is questioned, then the whole edifice breaks down. So, the obligation is dissolved. And hence, Ma Ganga reveals the Deva Rahasya to Shantanu, who does not have this vision, who does not have this understanding. So, Ma Ganga reveals how Shantanu was a great Rajarishi in Brahmaloka. And with Kama Bhava, when he viewed Ganga, since that desire could not be fulfilled in Brahmaloka, they had to be born in Manushya Rupa. So, there is a reasoning to take up birth. But it comes as a full package. So, he goes through various things. Similarly, we need to understand this leads to the idea of prarabdha. Karma is a very deep understanding. It's not just immediate causation correlation, but non-linear causation, multidimensional. You could have a desire, you cherish a desire, and over a period of time, let's say you don't have the circumstances to manifest that desire, you will have to come back for that. Because the current circumstances would not allow that desire to fructify. And who's to say that your desire is wrong? No. That's not how reality works. Every desire is divine. It's given credence. You could have the desire for artha. It's considered valid. But if it's not suitable in this prarabdha, you'll have to wait for it to find appropriate context where it can germinate. And hence the context of your current life is called prarabdha for this lifetime. When we understand this, we don't curse our life circumstances. Why would we do that? Whether you are rich or poor, or that does not matter. You understand? You desired certain thing, and to enable it, certain ground conditions have been set up for you to be able to realize that. And that is very critical to appreciate. Then we have appreciation for our own life circumstances. We never are, an ingrate. We have gratitude towards what is available to us, the people around us. We are grateful. Otherwise, we could be looking at them as enemies to our own progress. Someone who wishes to meditate might look at his own, his or her own people, family, as enemies. That is not a justified view. And this is shown through such episodes.
When you say about this, considering it to be unfavorable circumstance or considering it to be an enemy, I was reminded of this story of Dronacharya and his childhood friend Drupada, and how what started in childhood actually spun off into something very negative in the future.
So true. See, what could have been a beautiful relationship spun off out of hand. And you see the build-up. Drupada and Drona grew up together in the ashrama of their guru, Bharadvaja Muni, who was the father of Drona. His Shishya, Agniveshya, was the guru of Drupada and Drona. So they grow up together in the Gurukula. And Drupada commits to Drona, saying, later, when I grow up, I'll be king. I'll be a big Raja. At that time, don't worry, since you are my best friend, half my kingdom is yours. Childhood friendship works like that, no? It's like big commitment. It's waving in the air, flamboyance, and that's important, Sometimes we need to be imaginative. If we are too pragmatic, we will be like stuck. So that's when we need that childhood, flamboyance. So big commitments, I will give you half my kingdoms, Aja, And they go their ways, they graduate out of the Gurukula, they go their ways. Drupada is a powerful king. Now, Raja the Raja, a Chakravartin, with many kings attending to him. And Drona has become a great, knowledgeable person, researching into the depths of weaponry. And he has gained great astra, shastra and so on from great beings like Parashurama. Earned a lot of name for himself because of his excellent mastery of such deep sciences. But he is so dedicated to that knowledge that for him everything else is secondary. But then his son, Ashwathama, grows up with everybody. And the children make fun of him once, giving him rice flour mixed water and calling it milk. So this child is going gaga over drinking milk. Imagine a child not having access to milk. It can happen, very easily happen. Many children, they say Sahana Vavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu. Let us all have food. It might seem like a simplistic invocation. But if we expand our perspective, we see so many people do not have access to food. So many. By the billions in Bhuloka. Should there be a condition that someone does not have access to food? There should never be such a condition. But it is there. And that's where best practices in terms of governance, all these are very critical. The structures, the principle, as a principle, we all agree that everyone should have access to food. Everyone should have access to healthcare. Everyone should have access to education. Not easy to figure it out. Even now, we have not figured it out. But our Itihasa Purana already point to such a system. Already. For example, there is an episode of Bhishma giving advice to Yudhishthira. Of Yudhishthira asking who is a Supatra for Dana. Supatra means who is a right receiver of Dana. And Bhishma's advice is very, very interesting. He says, he uses the Varna system. Varna is a functional system, functional organization of society. So he says that Shudras earn their living, they are rich, they are self-sufficient, so they cannot be given Dana. Now our view is very different, but this is the view that is presented in the Itihasa. So self-sufficient, no question of poverty, no question of poverty at all. The Vaishyas similarly are rich, self-reliant, they earn their living and hence they cannot be given Dana. The Kshatriyas earn their living, are self-sufficient and hence they cannot be given Dana. The Brahmanas who earn their living cannot be given Dana. Only those Brahmanas who are dedicated only to knowledge and research, who do not earn for themselves, can be given Dana. Then what happens to handicapped people, orphans, destitute people, old people who do not have children, widows and so on, who have nobody for themselves? They are all the Raja's praja. They have to be taken care of by the Raja, by the state. So nobody in society is left out. It's very interesting. Now we turn a blind eye where we are not comfortable. These, whose responsibility is there? There is no answer. So that's where we see we need, it's not just principles orientation, also best practices in terms of implementation. And already Bharata had achieved such implementation. So this is a functional orientation that is provided. So Drupada grows up, Drona grows up, but Drona, because of his pursuit of knowledge, exclusive pursuit of knowledge, his child does not have access to milk. And then there is a discussion between Drona and Kripi, his wife, who is Kripacharya's sister. And it's decided that he will go seek wealth. Knowledge and research is fine, but now I need to seek funding. No. Even now for research, we need to seek funding. Funding is not easy to get. There's a lot of things that you will need to do to be able to attract funding. And that should also match with, the agenda, or it should match the line of thinking that is there. So, Drona immediately thinks of his childhood friend. We all might think of. So he approaches, there is the Raja Sabha, everyone is gathered there, and Drupada is the Raja, sitting on his throne, and Drona walks in. He's a poor Brahmana, poor in economics, in economic condition, but rich in knowledge. And that's what he values as wealth. It's appropriate understanding of wealth. Wealth is not the same, it's not an objective view, but a subjective, it's a full spectrum view. So Drona prides himself on his wealth. And with that wealth, obviously he would think of himself as an honorable person. See, each person who looks at their own wealth will look at it as honorable, dignified. Need not have a unified view of wealth. So he walks in and proudly claims, "Hey Drupada, I'm your childhood friend Drona. You had promised me half the kingdom. Now is the time to fulfill that promise. Give me half your kingdom." Imagine childhood, you grew up in the village with your friend. You are now a CEO sitting in a boardroom meeting, and your childhood friend is just walking into the boardroom and, "Hey, how are you? Give me half your company." So Drona, he is genuine. He is, in his eyes, he is great. And he is asking his friend, "Hey, give me this for my purpose." But that is not shared by his old friend, who now looks down upon him. He openly tells him, "Hey, who are you? You are but a poor Brahmana. How can you claim yourselves to be my equal? I'm a Rajan. I'm so powerful. These powerful, wealthy people are my friends. You are a nobody." But Drona does not consider himself a nobody. He is powerful in his own way. He is knowledgeable. That's his wealth. And hence he takes offense. And he makes up his mind, "I'll take revenge." And then starts the story where he trains the Pandavas and Kauravas. Till then, he is interested only in research. He is not interested in teaching. We are sitting in a research institution where there is a constant conflict between research and teaching. Research and teaching. So he gets into teaching. He trains, and as a Guru Dakshina, imagine many years later, as a Guru Dakshina, he does not ask for wealth. He does not ask for anything else. What does he ask for? Drupada's defeat. Drupada should be brought to his knees. So that vengeance takes over. When Drupada is defeated, Duryodhana tries it. He is no match for Drupada. He is an emperor, very powerful emperor. Finally, Arjuna manages to defeat him. And that's when Drupada, who is made to kneel in front of his own army. See, defeat does not mean killing. No, it's not murder. It's in principle. So he is defeated. And hence Drona feels satisfied. Now he says, "Now we are equals. I will give you half my kingdom." And Drona thinks that that's it. But then now Drupada takes it up. He wants revenge. And Drishtadyumna is born for the express purpose of defeating and killing Drona. And that's what he does. And that is taken up by Drona's son, Ashwathama, who is not happy at this at all, who slays all the warriors who are sleeping, including Drishtadyumna. So you'd see it's a negative spiral of vengeance, of bitterness. While in contrast, if you see, Krishna and Sudama, they are also childhood friends who grew up in the same Gurukula, then parted ways. Krishna was a powerful Kshatriya. Sudama was a poor Brahmana, devoted to research. He also approaches Krishna for wealth. Having come there, before his asking, Krishna pulls him, makes him sit beside him, hand in hand, discusses all old stories, nostalgic memories of growing up together, playing awesome fun, all that. In that, Sudama has partially forgotten what he came there for. The treatment is so well. His feet are washed by Krishna. Everyone in attendance, everyone going gaga over Sudama, 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 childhood friend of Krishna. Everyone is, such is the reception. And Sudama leaves without asking. But he is given without even having asked. He is given much more. Now imagine, just contrast this and this. So the Mahabharata provides appropriate episodes, which provides, food for thought, introspection. In good faith, how do we go forward? How do we not get locked up in negativity? Because one can perish in negativity, a whole life lost in negativity, in vengeance, in revenge. Imagine, the stimuli if we look at Drona's asking half a kingdom. What was the stimuli? What was the reason? One glass of milk. अरे एक चाय पिला देना. If he could have just asked, one glass of milk, or better still, he could have asked, give me a cow. One cow is sufficient. See, more than that, what is he? He's a researcher. He's busy researching. One cow, taking care of it will not be a problem. That way, anyhow, milk problem will also have been solved, practically. He didn't reason out like that. Drupada could have said, hey, you are my friend. I will do anything for you. Just wait. Evening we will discuss. This is a general sabha. You are my friend. You are my honored guest. We have so much to talk. We will talk in the evening. He also did not say that. And this is how the problem grows. Well, in Krishna's case, the problem did not grow in the first place. So that's where dharma as superimposed on the Atma Bhava. How you and I are the same principle, one and the same. Expressions are unique. When we come from that understanding, that is dharma, that which reinforces that principle. Otherwise, our karma could take us away from dharma. Karma is the activities, the functioning. The functioning that is there in society can take us away from the Atma Bhava, and that is adharma. Dharma, adharma, vichara. And that's a very critical component. So we see, coming back, now that, a frame within a frame, we will come back to the old frame to illustrate the principle of karma further. Because these are very important. That's how the Mahabharata leads us. Because through our own life experience, can we decode this? No. Most of us do not have that big data of experience. We have very limited data set. Our own life experience is very limited data set. With that, what understanding will we draw? Very limited. That's why we need access to the big data that is provided by our Itihasa Purana, by our Shastra. By ourselves, if we were to design any of these, would we be able to? No, it would take a lifetime. So we access and utilize the wisdom provided in our Shastra, the collective know-how that is there. So Ma Ganga explains to Shantanu the reason for their birth. Ma Ganga was not born, she embodied herself. But Shantanu had to be born through a womb, and hence he forgot who he was. That happens. There is a particular Vayu described in the Yoga Shastra, which makes us forget who we are. That's a particular prana. Otherwise, we can have access to our memory, who we are. But would we be okay with that? That is another question. And that requires that Atma Bhava, where we can come to a samadhana. Otherwise, we will be carrying the hurts and bitterness of our past as well. Even in the current lifetime, we are not able to come to a resolution, to terms. When we look at others, we don't look at them as they are now. We rather look at our image of them through the brief interactions that we have had with them. And that's a huge burden of constant judgment. So even this simple thing to overcome requires a spiritual depth, where we see all the negative and positivities within us, by which we see everyone is okay the way they are. Otherwise, others might not be okay in our vision. So Ma Ganga explains further the reason for drowning the children. The Ashtavasus, divine beings, once stole the cow of Vasishta Muni, and for a trivial reason. The eighth Vasu, his wife motivated him to steal, and he did an act which should not be done, and he involved his brothers in the act. Obviously, the all-knowing Vasishta Muni came to know, and he looked at us, what have you done? You are divine beings. You are the Ashtavasu. You should not even have such desire, but you have done such a trivial act. And the act was commissioned by the eighth Vasu's wife because she wanted to gift that cow to her human friend, taking from here and giving it there. That's what she wanted to give. But that is not sanctioned. That is inappropriate. Just because you are powerful, you cannot abuse your power. And hence, Vasishta Muni curses them. All of them are sentenced to a life on earth because they are not from earth. Bhuloka need not be the best of places. Because we don't have an option, we think we don't have an option, we think this is the best place. That's more out of being stuck. Otherwise, there are options. Now Mars colonization process is on. Like that, more colonies will come up, space colonies. It's already work in progress. Maybe in about 1-2 decades time, we will be there. Seriously. So, India investing in that direction is very reasonable. So, solving the poverty angle is another kind of work. But this kind of research and development and progress also is very important. All-round development is important. Doing this does not and need not negate that. It's not like mutually exclusive. That's a very important idea of growth that our Itihasa Purana points to as well. So the Ashtavasus, there was no reason for them to do this, and they did it. And hence they are cursed. The first 7 Vasus, they seek the forgiveness of Vasishta. And their sentence is reduced. It's reduced to just spending time in the womb. That is good enough. What is meant by suffering or punishment? It is to help one introspect. And that introspection is a divine quality. It is to give opportunity for that. Otherwise, when we are immersed in our regular circumstances, we lose perspective. We lose the perspective of what is right, what is not. Because we are always immersed in this, and hence we take things for granted. That can very easily happen. That's also a clouding that happens. And hence a contrasting experience is prescribed, which leads to introspection. Just as there is a day, there is a night. That contrasting episode helps us gain better appreciation. Otherwise, we don't appreciate our own life circumstances. So to provide that contrast, so that they can analyze their own actions, to gain that perspective, for the Jivatma to gain that multi-angled perspective, situations are prescribed. So that's how the 7 Vasus are born. They have a understanding with Ma Ganga that we will be born, please offer us a womb. She agrees. But they want to be liberated as soon as they are born. Now this is Deva Rahasya, and this cannot be shared with everybody because there would be opposition. Not everyone will appreciate that because not everyone will have the spiritual depth of understanding. And hence these are Guhya, these are secrets. These are not Guhya. To a spiritualized vision, these are not Guhya. But for others who don't have that vision, it's Guhya. So the 7 Vasus, they're cursed to take birth. The 8th Vasu, who was the perpetrator of the act, gets a long sentence. So he is cursed to a long and glorious life on earth. Still, it's a curse, but a glorious life. And that is Bhishma's story. Bhishma is born. So these are the preceding events. So we start seeing how karma, the consequences are attached. They lead to non-linear events. Very valid. That's where the drishti that everyone has, that interaction creates this apparent reality. It's apparent. It's not actually so. It is just like the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. But is the sun rising actually? The earth is rotating. But in our vision, what is true? The sun rising is true. In our vision, the earth is not rotating, it's static, it's stable. How interesting. This is called Maya Rupa. It's apparently so. That's how drishti, different people when we interact with each other, each holds a different drishti. That interaction, that complexity of interaction creates this reality. Creates the institutions in society. Creates the family structures. It's subtle. And that subtle vision is enabled by the Mahabharata. So even the subjective reality, when we look at how are value systems in society created? For example, an institution like this, it has a long ethos and a culture of excellence. So that has been created by people's vision, holding on to certain values, and that as new members join the institution, it's transferred to them and they have to hold it up. Otherwise, it will degrade. The culture of excellence will be gone. And this is the nature of interaction of drishti. This seems subjective. But you can see that is how the values in society work. The values in an organization work. The values in a family work. Even in one's own life.
In fact, for example, marriage as an institution, the way it happens today was not seen as necessary in those times as recorded in the Itihasa Purana. Then it was, I think, Maharishi, Shvetaketu, who gave this current structure to the marriage. And then since then we have been following this structure. So before that, since everybody was devoted to their dharma, it was not seen as a necessary step the way we see it.
To have an obligatory contract. There was no contractual obligation because everyone understood dharma. Because there was a sliding in the understanding, a contractual obligation was necessary.
Somebody had to sort of organize it in a better way.
And that's why one of the prime principles, the role models that was shown was Vasishtha and Arundhati as the ideal role models for the contractual obligation to fulfill those conditions. Because Vasishtha and Arundhati are described as binary star systems, Alcor and Mizar in the Saptarishi Mandala, Ursa Major.
During the marriage ceremony, we are shown the Arundhati Nakshatra.
So that is the significance of it. It's symbolic now. But the symbol always points to, for example, this manifestation is considered symbolic, pointing to the Atman. That's called Linga Swarupa. Linga Rupa means a pointer to what? A deeper principle which is not self-evident. That's how it's taken. So pointing to Arundhati means Arundhati and Vasishtha are binary star systems going around a common center of gravity. They are equal, but their paths are unique. But they are held together by dharma. If the relationship is based on kama, it's very short-lived. For example, if you put a gulab jamun in your mouth, how long does the taste last? Hardly a few minutes. After that, you will have to put in one more. After that, one more. After that, one more. After that, one more. And it degrades. It's a degrading experience. That is the nature of kama. So if a society is kama pradhana, it will be a degrading experience for the individuals, the society's members. That's how the Shastra illustrates.
Because any change will be seen as an obstacle to that enjoyment.
For example, students when they come to a college, they look at movies and are inspired by looking at college in the movies. The depiction of college in the movies is fun. Canteen, friends, fun. When they come to college, it's a huge shock that there are deadlines, there are submissions, assignments, I have to attend class, attendance. They are up in arms because it clashes with their expectations, which have been built by popular projections. Right? Like that popular projection of marriage can be quite misleading, and hence there would be a clash of expectations. Like, I didn't sign up for this, but then the principles have not been explained at all. No, that's where educated expectations become very important. And that's where if a society is built on artha pradhana, there are examples for this that are shown. If it is just materialistic success and wealth, then that also will have consequences. Because that kind of a value system will promote certain things, but there will be consequences along other lines. For example, a relationship that is based just on artha, after a certain point will not hold. A few challenges. For example, we all get paid monthly salary. What if our institution does not pay us a salary for 1 month? Most people will quit because the relationship is bound only by artha. There is dharma, but pradhana is artha. So that's why marriage is supposed to be much more stable. It has to be stable. It has to be able to weather all kinds of challenges. It cannot be artha pradhana. It cannot be kama pradhana. It has to be dharma pradhana. That's why a wife is also called saha dharmacharini, one who walks together along the path of dharma. The wife or the husband are considered the best friend. One should be able to confide completely in that. So these kinds of role models are presented. Now, since most young people have not been given an appropriate introduction to our Itihasa Purana, they have a negative view of it. There's been this confusion where our own history has been relegated as prehistory and not even as history. And hence there has been a moving away, and that continuity being broken, that's not freedom. We need sophistication of modernity with the rootedness of culture, both together. Otherwise, development will be, just with no basis. And hence, everyone will have ethical dilemmas. Everything will be a dharma sankata because there will be no basis, no ground on which to stand. And that is what is the challenge for young people. There is no basis to reason out. And hence everything is they're in trauma. Everything is traumatic because there is no line to reason out. What is dharma, what is adharma? In fact, it is also presented that there is no good or bad, and hence anything is okay. So that leads to further confusion rather than a resolution of that confusion. And that's why certain principles, for example, when we eat food, certain food nourishes, certain other food clearly is not food. See, for example, I cannot eat this, just a case in point. But this distinction has to also be approached intellectually. And intellectually means clear lines of reasoning, frameworks are important. And that's where the frameworks presented in our Itihasa Purana are very powerful. It gives us clear lines of reasoning. And that means one can self-navigate. It helps us in self-navigation. It gives us the tools to do that. And that's where we have been understanding karma.
So when we say karma, in our Shastras, we talk about prarabdha, sanchita and agami or kriyamana karma. So prarabdha karma is the karma that is allocated for this particular lifetime, which we go through. The sanchita karma is of course the sum total of all karmas that we have accumulated since we have born, maybe as a unicellular being or as an animal, as a plant or whatever it is. We have been accumulating, the bank account has been filling up which is the Sanchita karma, which is the sum total of all karma that we have been accumulating. Karma, the word means action, okay, but the impressions are what we are carrying forward. And the Agami or Kriyamana karma is the karma that we gather in this lifetime for future lifetimes. So, I often, since we explain it to students, I often use this mundane example where you have 10,000 rupees in your bank and that is considered to be your Sanchita karma, because that is how much it is available for you to spend. And now you withdraw 100 rupees from the bank account, which is the Prarabdha karma, which is available for you to spend now. Now what you do, you go and then buy a lottery ticket. In the lottery ticket, you get 5,000 rupees. So in the process of expending this Prarabdha karma, you have accumulated more karma, which you have to now deposit in the bank, because you have gotten that 5,000 rupees. Because it is a lottery ticket, it looks very interesting, but when it comes to karma, you don't want to actually fill the bank account, rather you want to keep spending and nullifying the bank account. So when the bank account is nullified, as he said, we don't have to come back, because the account would have been closed. There is no fancy, we don't feel any meaning in coming back and engaging with this material reality. At that time we say we have attained moksha, mukti, whatever, kaivalya, and many, in each philosophical system there is a way to understand this. So we do see that our actions have concrete consequence. We often quote this example, like when you vote, right? Can you say because of your vote that candidate won? Can't say, because so many people are voting. But thinking like that, can you refrain from voting? No, anyway your vote counts. So similarly, the actions that we do, those may not be the sole reasons for certain consequence, but that does not mean that they are not responsible for those consequences as well. So every action that we do has a consequence, it is at an appropriate context. And that is what the stories in the Mahabharata also illustrate, why a person is like that. If they kept their mouth shut, why was it like that? There is a full background to it in terms of many lifetimes of karmic impressions that have been formed. Or if a person fought the war in a certain way, there has been an entire background. That is why going through the Mahabharata in entirety is what helps to understand it in perspective. Otherwise, we just read one story, like it's called like cherry picking. We just read one story out of context and try to make a judgment. It is like seeing a person making a judgment based on one episode. But what led to that episode will be useful to understand. That is why taking up an elaborate version of the Mahabharata, maybe start with an abridged version, but then going into an elaborate version will really help, because that helps us to put the characters in context and also better understand the situations.
And understanding the context is not just for fun or not just to understand dharma, but also to complete the cycle. And that's where moksha, it's also called a moksha shastra, not just a dharma shastra, but also a moksha shastra. And moksha is very critical. When we say moksha, as she beautifully illustrated, to add to that, we all as children, we played with toys. Now the same toys, when they are presented to us, would we go through those emotions, jealousy, pride on owning something, or fighting over this? None of that. Can we say we are detached from it? Can we say we are attached to it? Basically, we have grown up. That's a description of moksha, where the Purusha, the core individuated consciousness, has no use of Prakriti. It stands liberated. Its job is done. That's it. And when is it done? By participating wholeheartedly in the whole process. If your participation in your own life has been half-hearted, then it's not done. It's undone. If the participation has been wholehearted, you come to tripti. You have gained what you came for. And that's by your own participation. Otherwise, Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani, jatare shayanam. It's like it goes in cycles. Because you don't feel satisfied as the Jivatma. It is not just an intellectual process. When you have done something and you feel that's it, there is nobody to gainsay that. That's it. But you need to feel it, you cannot fake it. And that's where there is a powerful illustration provided. After the war, Dhritarashtra, the father of Duryodhana and 100 brothers, he asks Yudhishthira, who has won the war, is that winning? Yudhishthira does not look at it as winning. He feels it's a loss. But still, Dhritarashtra questions Yudhishthira. So many people have lost their lives. After giving up their bodies, where did they go to? Very illustrative question. So we journey forward. We are a continuous being with a temporary experience here. So the journey continues. So where did they proceed to? And for which Yudhishthira's response is very, very essential to understand the idea of dharma, the nature of karma, the nature of our own life, how to live our life. It's very, very illustrative. The path of moksha. How does it work? So Raja Yudhishthira answers, those warriors that had no enthusiasm, who did not want to fight, who were running away and they were killed, they went to Guhyaka Loka, the land of Kubera. Those warriors that did not run away showed a little valor, but fought half-heartedly. They are not fully there. They, and on losing their lives, they went to Gandharva Loka, a slightly better Loka. Those warriors who fought enthusiastically, full जोर से, मन लगा के, it's their swadharma, it's warriors swadharma, and who were killed. On giving up their bodies, they went to Devaloka, Indraloka, a much better position. But those warriors who fought enthusiastically lost all their weapons and yet displayed tremendous qualities. They, on giving up their bodies, they went to Brahmaloka. This is true even now, even for a career progression we see. Many people who join companies or organizations, they imagine that nobody is watching them. And they do a half-hearted job, a messy job, thinking, how does it matter? Disinterested. But no, these qualities matter even for career progression. And imagine spiritual progression. Definitely they matter. When in our lives we are true to ourselves, that matters a lot. That means our life matters. And who should it matter to most? Ourselves, first and foremost. And that is not easy. That's a highly intelligent, reasoned out phenomena. And that's where, to develop that depth of vision, we need the guidance offered by our Itihasa Puranas, our Shastra. In the educational process, now there is no guidance that is available. Everyone is left to fend for themselves. It's like throwing oneself, into the water, and just some people struggle and figure out. But most people, they are at a loss. And that's a disservice, having so much available, not making it available for people. Everything is there, but that needs to be made available through an appropriate educational process, by which people can access it and live much better lives. And that improves the whole society, improves the whole world. And that's why Bharat as Vishwaguru is apt, where such wealth of material is available. The whole world is suffering from a poverty of inspiration, looking at lives as what is the meaning? Young people are suffering. Nobody wants to live a Purna Ayu, 100 years. Because already it's like, what else to do in life? That vision can be provided by access to this knowledge base. And hence, let's end with a small invocation. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.